Girls, did you ever have a guy that you wished you said yes to when he asked you out? Story 1. It was freshman year of college. I made eye contact with some random guy from across the quad. He walked over, sat next to me, and we had a short conversation. He invited me to his room before my friend showed up and dragged me away. Turned out we lived in the same building. I went to his room and we talked and joked as though we'd known each other our entire lives. And constantly, this kick-ass engineer student was complimenting me, the mediocre biology kid, on how smart I was. He and I ran into each other several times, and there was always a palpable tension between us. But I was in a long-distance relationship at the time, and I never went for it. I turned down the only guy to ever give me butterflies in my stomach and make me smile like an idiot. Story 2. Two guys come to mind. Guy 1 was so sweet, and I did like him, but he was going too fast for my liking, saying, "I love you," too soon, etc. He somehow lost heart in pursuing a relationship with me when I told him to slow down as it was making me uncomfortable. We rekindled our thing a few years later, but it wasn't quite the same and it didn't amount to anything serious. He's now in a long-distance relationship with a beautiful girl. From what I can see from the outside of their relationship, he's a very sweet and devoted boyfriend. I sometimes think I missed out. Guy 2 was someone I really liked, but he was always talking about other girls, so I didn't think he liked me that much. One day he asked if I'll go out with him, but it was set up to seem like a joke, so I said, "No, that's ridiculous," because I didn't want to appear too eager and vulnerable. I found out later that he was serious, but he wanted to seem casual. This happened in high school, hence all these stupid games. He had moved on to other girls by the time I found out and went into a relationship with this girl. She was his first girlfriend. When they broke up, it devastated him. Then sometime after, we got together. I was his rebound, so it was doomed from the start as he wasn't over her. I thought that if I had said yes to him when he asked me the first time, I would have been his first, and he would have loved me that much. Story 3, I worked for several years with Harry. We had a lot of fun at work and also went out surfing, beach days, mutual friend stuff together too. Only gradually did I realize I was developing genuine feelings for him. I kept all this to myself, of course. He seemed way out of my league, and I didn't want to make our work relationship awkward. Once he asked me if I'd go shopping with him to find some shoes. We went to the mall, found some kicks, and then he asked me if I wanted lunch. I said, "Nah, I wanted to work out before work, so see you later." Didn't understand he was maybe asking me to lunch as a date until much later. Idiot. We continued to work together and hang as friends though, and we both dated other people. Eventually he left the job to travel and finish school, but still came by to hang out. One night we were all drinking and we went out back to share a smoke. We were pretty drunk, and I was sitting on this raised box thing, and he stood in front of me and placed his hands on my knees, looked into my eyes and said, "Tinfoil hat, Pat, I love you." I've never been able to say this before. I love you. I've loved you a long time. And I said, okay, handed him the smoke and went back inside. I didn't know how to reply. I had had inklings that he had feelings for me, but we never came out and said it. I had a boyfriend at the time and wouldn't cheat, so here I am. Harry, if you read this, I love you too. Story 4. Wow, I can't believe how relevant this is to my situation. Throw away just in case he or a friend recognizes this post. Don't want the surprise to be ruined. I had a really good friend in high school who, to put it lightly, was a man whore. We were really close. He would tell me everything about his sexual escapades with a variety of girls, some I knew and some who were much older. Despite all these conversations, I started to fall for him. Underneath his reputation was someone kind and loving to all his friends. He was the type who would do anything for anyone. He was a great father figure to his younger siblings and was essentially the man of the house. Junior year, he revealed that he was starting to like me. He asked if I would be his date to our friend's annual New Year's party, but I was an assuming, ignorant bitch, and I brushed it off. I was hurt that he would try to get in my pants. I thought I meant more to him than just another girl to mess around with. I never told him how I felt about him. Instead, I cut off ties with him. I started to distance myself from him little by little with no explanation. He would try to talk to me, but I would try my hardest to avoid him altogether. I went away to college and he stayed in our hometown. After too much time thinking, I realized what I did was immature. Recently, we have started talking again, and I apologized for being a huge bitch. He told me he knew I'd come around again, but I'm happy to know he really does care for me still. He doesn't know it, but I'm going back home tonight for Christmas. I plan on surprising him. I'm going to ask him to be my date to the New Year's party our friend has every year. Story 5. It was my sophomore year of college, and I had a boyfriend. A nice enough guy, but a total stoner without an ounce of ambition. He was away on a weekend get-stoned with my buddy's trip, and I was bored and walking across campus to the student union building. It was a cold, blustery weekend, and it was honest to God like something out of a rom-com. I dropped a stack of papers and they started blowing around, and up ran the football player dude who'd been flirting with me off and on in one of my classes. He asked me if I wanted to go get some coffee for my poor, freezing hands, and I said, what the hell? We opted for cocoa instead, and sat there for nearly 2 hours. It turns out he was an honors student and only played football to get the scholarship he needed. He was funny and really smart and so freaking gorgeous. I couldn't believe he was talking to me. He told me he came to see all my shows. I was a theater major. And he finally asked if he could see me again, really see me. And I wanted to say yes so badly, but I also couldn't cheat on my boyfriend either. I turned him down, and he told me if I changed my mind, to let him know. I ended up staying with a stoner boy for another few months, and by then the football dude had a girlfriend. I looked him up on Google once a few years back. He ended up becoming a doctor. He chairs the Special Olympics committee in his hometown, and he seems like he's still a terrific guy. He'll always be one I wish I could go back and say yes to. Story 6. This is my wife's story, but it involves me. We were high school sweethearts, and shortly after we started dating, she was asked to go to a school dance by Larry Fitzgerald. She turned him down, noting she had a boyfriend. When she told me about it that evening, she was surprised to hear my reaction, which was that she fucking blew it. At this point, Larry was already an athletic freak. Even in the 10th or 11th grade, it was clear this guy was going on to big things. As life progressed and my wife and I started a family, Larry's career progressed and he continued to excel. I would occasionally remark to my gal that Larry had just hit another milestone, killing it at Pitt, winning awards, and so on. When the draft approached and he was projected as a top 3 pick, I again pointed out that she blew it. She would always respond with, "But I was with you," or "He was kinda weird anyway." When he was selected 3rd by the Cards, I again pointed out how she blew it. She shrugged it off. A couple weeks later, I walk into the kitchen and she's holding the sports page. I ask what she's reading and she just says, "I fucking blew it," handed me the paper and walked away. The headline said something along the lines of, "Fitzgerald agrees to the $60 million contract." Story 7. I'm a guy, speaking for a girl, but this story always breaks my heart. I asked a girl out while she was a waitress at a pizza place. She agreed to go out as friends, and I spent the next 6 months politely picking her up, taking her to lunch or dinner, and doing my best to not pressure her away from me. I was in the friend zone with no signs of escaping. My boss gave me great tickets to go see the San Francisco Giants at Candlestick Park, so I invited her. She agreed. Neither of us were baseball fans, but it seemed like it would be a great experience. It wasn't. It was freezing, we had no idea what was happening, and when I suggested we leave, she agreed. I drove her home, and as I was walking her to the door, I grasped her hand, the first time we had held hands. She yanked her hand back. I remember the words very clearly. "It's too fast." Okay. Message received. She had moved a distance away from me, so I let things go. I stopped calling her and she made no effort to contact me. Goodbye, Deborah. Several years later, I had met somebody else and had actually become engaged. I got a phone call from Deborah. She was hoping to get together. I told her that I was in a serious relationship, so perhaps it wasn't a good idea. We chit-chatted a bit and said our goodbyes. A week or so later, I got a card from her explaining how much she regretted pushing me away, and that she considered me the one that got away. The funny thing is that I was so madly in love with her. To this day, I think of her. My wife is amazing, and I am so very lucky, but I always wonder what would have happened. Story 8. Last year in college, I had a crush on this guy who lived down the hall from me. I had a boyfriend, though, who I felt very strongly for, despite him not treating me all that well. Whenever I was upset that my boyfriend had canceled another date to get high with his friends, the guy down the hall would invite me over and make me tea, and we'd watch Doctor Who. He'd also make me poutine and bring it to my door every so often. He was a complete sweetheart, but I was convinced I was in love with my boyfriend. Fast forward about a week, my boyfriend breaks up with me in a fast food burrito place. The guy down the hall made me tea. A few weeks later, the guy down the hall asked me out, and I said yes, but the whole time I felt awkward because I was still convinced I was in love with my now ex. I wanted so badly to go out with him, because he was great and attractive and so smart, but I knew I needed time. I was afraid that if I told him all of that, he'd take it as rejection. A friend of mine told me that's what would happen. So I just decided to put some space between us and hope he would still want to go out when some time had passed. About 3 weeks later, wounds had healed and I went to his door to see if he wanted to have tea. His roommate answered, and I saw him look very awkward and say, he's sleeping. I'll tell him you stopped by. He got a new girlfriend. A year later, he's still with her. I want to be happy for him, but I still regret everything. I ended up getting back together with my ex. He was absolutely horrible to me for about 3 months, and we broke up again for good. StoryNine, I worked several summers in high school and after graduation at the customer service desk at a family-owned grocery store in my hometown, check cashing, Western Union, Lotto, smokes, etc. The last year I did this before I left for college, very regularly. This Hispanic guy my age would come in to cash his paycheck. I didn't speak more than a few words of Spanish, and he didn't seem to speak any English, but oh man, was he hot. I'd get really flustered every time he came in. It seemed like he made an effort to come in when I was working, because he'd come in almost every week even when my schedule would change, and we'd both just smile and sort of alternate between staring at each other and avoiding eye contact while I cashed his check. After a while, he'd come in just to buy a candy bar or something, and come to my desk instead of the regular checkout lanes. I didn't think it would go anywhere, since I didn't speak any Spanish, and he didn't speak any English. But there we were, every week. I'd look forward to seeing him, and just melt every time he came in. And then, one day, he came up to my desk, and in the most adorably broken English I could never imitate, he asked me if I wanted to go out after work. I was so ridiculously flustered, I was so shy, and so socially awkward and so insecure that I'd convinced myself that never in a million years would this fairy tale story of teen romance, despite the language barrier, actually become anything more than a fantasy. To this day, about 13 years later, I still kick myself for being so stupid. When he asked me, like an idiot, I stammered and said something about not being allowed to date customers, which is complete BS, by the way. My dad met my mom in that exact store while he was checking. The cute Hispanic guy looked crushed, and inwardly I was crushed by my own stupidity-shocked social awkwardness. He didn't even buy whatever it was he was trying to buy, left the Snickers bar on the counter and left. I went home after my shift and just cried. I told my dad about it, he worked at the store too, and I remember him laughing at me in this sympathetic way. I must have looked really devastated. And he said that next time he came in, I should just be brave and try to talk to him again and tell him I'd been mistaken about the rules about dating employees, but I never ever saw him again. And then I went to college, and even though I worked at the store again between semesters, I never saw him again. I still remember this guy, and I still hate myself for being so stupid. StoryTen, story of my life. Ever since I was a child, my passion was to be a cinematographer. I grew up trying to learn as much as I could. I ended up going to a trade school for cinematography and worked hard to earn a top-tier spot in class. Post-graduation, I found immediate work and have been a freelance cinematographer working passionately for 2 years. Last month, I was recently hired full-time to be a cinematographer editor at an awesome news company, and I am so incredibly blessed and grateful that my dream has since become my reality. With that being said, I have always sort of been married to my passion career. I am a very outgoing person. I am active, I longboard, I play pool, I drink whiskey, I play air bass at rock shows. I get a modest amount of attention from the opposite sex. The attention is flattering, but I never let it go anywhere. I meet guys at bars, but don't let them take me home. I put up a subconscious defense thinking for some reason that if I let a guy in, I won't be able to get to where I want to go. I met one of my best friends at the trade school for filmmakers. He was a cinematographer like myself, and we had an incredible amount in common. We ended up becoming fantastic partners in the freelance game, and together filmed cinematic weddings, commercials, a few short narratives, and even a music video. I knew he had always been interested in me from the start. To say that I wasn't also interested would be a lie. I just needed to figure out if that was a possibility for me. About 3 months ago, I graduated college last June. I met him at the start of 2012. He finally asked me. I was so overwhelmed with emotion and felt trapped. It's not that I didn't expect it, I just wasn't ready. I did say no. He was very upset. We didn't talk for about 2 weeks, but then we both suggested that we meet up to talk over some pho. We had the mutual understanding that we should be in each other's lives, but I had to explain a part of me that is just ingrained in my soul. I don't think I can fairly give the amount of time a man deserves in a relationship. To meet them halfway right now would be too much, because I am so invested in my career. I would love companions, but I am simply not ready to give them what they want. I have thought about it almost every day, wondering if I just lost my soulmate. I am grateful we are still friends, but there is definitely something different in the air around us. I do get saddened sometimes that this is who I am, but at the same time, I am 24. I am in love with my passion, and I am so excited to be alive and learning and thriving. My time will hopefully come when it is meant to.